The sky over Earth cracked open. A streak of blinding light tore through the atmosphere, followed by a thunderous roar that rattled windows and set dogs howling in fear. Thousands of alien ships, each one larger than a city block, descended from the heavens with military precision. The invasion had begun. Earth, once thought to be nothing more than a backwater planet teeming with primitive life, was now the target of a galactic alliance determined to claim it as their own. On the ground, all was chaos. Cities fell into disarray as sirens blared, warning the unprepared populace of the impending doom. People ran in panic, trying to outrun a terror they didn't fully understand. Military bases scrambled to activate defense protocols, but the vastness of the invasion was overwhelming. The alien forces, an amalgamation of species from across the galaxy, had landed with shockingly swift efficiency, and their superiority in numbers and technology left little hope for humanity's survival. But as the ships touched down and the first wave of alien forces poured onto Earth's soil, something unexpected happened. They stopped. The invaders paused, scanning their surroundings, confused by what they found. They had expected lush, fertile plains, simple ecosystems ripe for easy conquest. Instead, they were confronted with a harsh, unpredictable planet that didn't behave according to the laws of the universe they knew. General Torvak, leader of the Allied forces, stood at the command center aboard his flagship. His clawed hands gripped the armrest of his chair, the knuckles twitching as he watched the scenes unfolding on his planet-wide surveillance network. His species had conquered countless worlds, and Earth was meant to be just another easy acquisition. Yet here they were, bogged down by something none of their technology or expertise could easily explain. "We have landed in the wrong place," muttered the general's advisor, Claff, a reptilian strategist from a neighboring star system. His voice echoed with disbelief as he reviewed the data. "What do you mean?" Torvak growled, his patience wearing thin. "This is a primitive world. Their defenses are weak. Their technology is nothing compared to ours. We will crush them." Claff turned to face the general, his expression grave. "The biosphere, it's not right. Earth's atmosphere is unstable. We thought it was standard oxygen-based, but it's volatile. The fauna, they are not what we were led to believe." Torvak's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" "We are being attacked by Earth's creatures," Claff replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "Animals, wildlife, are not only hostile, but seem to be defending the planet from us. Our drones are malfunctioning. Our weapon systems are being disrupted by the electromagnetic fields generated by their weather patterns. We are not dealing with a primitive world here, Torvak. We are dealing with a living force." Torvak's mind raced as he processed the information. Earth wasn't the simple, defenseless planet they had been led to believe. It was a place where every element, from the air they breathed to the ground beneath their feet, was conspiring against them. The general clenched his teeth. "Activate all weapon systems," Torvak commanded. "We will force our way through no matter what this world throws at us." Below, on the surface of Earth, the alien forces began their assault. Their ships unleashed a barrage of firepower, laser beams, plasma blasts, and even chemical weapons on the surrounding cities. Humans, caught off guard, scrambled to organize a defense, but their efforts were futile. The aliens had superior technology, and Earth's defenses were primitive at best. The invaders pushed forward with little resistance. However, Earth's response was far from over. Out of nowhere, an unnatural windstorm erupted from the horizon. It struck with the force of a hurricane, tearing into the alien forces, knocking over their ships and sending their soldiers stumbling. Lightning cracked across the sky, striking several of the invader craft with pinpoint accuracy. The aliens, taken completely by surprise, scrambled to regroup as their technology faltered in the face of nature's fury. In the chaos, a strange realization began to set in. This wasn't just a storm. It was something far more intentional. The aliens had underestimated Earth, assuming it was just another world waiting to be taken. But they were wrong. The planet wasn't defenseless. It was a predator in its own right. A beast that had learned to survive in ways no one in the galaxy could understand. Among the human soldiers, a sense of dread mixed with resolve. The storm that ravaged the alien ranks was only the beginning. Earth had no intention of letting these invaders destroy it without a fight. As the alien forces struggled to maintain their foothold, human military units, previously scattered and disorganized, found their courage. Fighter jets streaked across the sky, engaging alien ships in dogfights that seemed to defy all logic. The aliens' advanced technology was no match for Earth's resilience. The land itself seemed to rise against them, and in the midst of the chaos, the human soldiers rallied together in a show of defiance. But Torvak was not one to back down so easily. On his command ship, the general stood, his eyes blazing with fury. "These creatures are more than we bargained for," he said. "But we are invaders, and we do not retreat." He turned to Clath. "Prepare the next wave. Earth may be a death world, but we will bring it to its knees." The storm above Earth raged on, but now it was more than just weather. It was a warning. The invaders had no idea what they had awakened. The alien fleet was caught in a deadly trap. Earth was not the primitive world they had expected. They were fighting not just against human technology, but against a planet that seemed to have a mind of its own. General Torvak watched from his command ship as his forces struggled against the unexpected fury of Earth's ecosystems. The storm had decimated several of his ships, and what had been an easy landing turned into a nightmare. His forces were being picked apart by wildlife that shouldn't have been capable of the level of aggression they displayed. And worse, their own technology, the very cornerstone of their domination, was malfunctioning at every turn. Human resistance began to take shape amidst the confusion. From the fractured remains of cities, humans began to organize. It wasn't just military bases that fought back. It was the very people who had once lived their ordinary lives without any knowledge of the alien threat. Within hours of the initial assault, pockets of human soldiers had begun using guerrilla tactics, exploiting their intimate knowledge of Earth's terrain. They were outmatched in terms of firepower and numbers, but the invaders soon realized they were dealing with something more dangerous, a species that had survived on a world where every step could mean death. Humanity had been forged in the fires of a deadly planet, a planet where the landscape itself fought against life, where survival wasn't guaranteed, and where only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable endured. On the ground, a human fighter jet, the last of its kind, soared through the skies, engaging alien craft in a dogfight that defied belief. The pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Grange, was no veteran of war. She was a regular Air Force officer who had only received her combat training in the last few weeks. But it didn't matter. The war didn't care about experience. It cared about who could adapt first. And Sarah Grange had something the aliens did not, an intimate understanding of Earth's environment. With a deft twist of her controls, she sent her jet careening through a twisting cloud formation, narrowly dodging an alien plasma shot that exploded just behind her. She pushed the throttle to the limit, diving straight into the heart of the alien formation. The alien ships, with their advanced targeting systems, couldn't keep up with the unpredictable maneuvers that came naturally to a human pilot accustomed to Earth's atmospheric turbulence. The human advantage was not just in tactics, it was in the very fabric of their existence. The planet's extreme conditions had shaped their species to be versatile, quick-thinking, and resilient in ways the invaders couldn't comprehend. Back at the Human Command Center, General Harper watched the chaos unfold on his screens. He stood tall, his mind racing through a million different strategies. Earth wasn't just going to survive this invasion. It was going to fight back in ways the invaders could never anticipate. "Deploy the scouts," Harper ordered. "Let's get eyes on the ground. We need to know where we can use Earth's natural resources to our advantage." The scouts, a select group of elite soldiers trained to navigate Earth's toughest terrain, were dispatched into the heart of enemy territory. They were experts in camouflage, stealth, and survival, each carrying a wealth of knowledge about the planet's vast, unpredictable ecosystems. One scout, Sergeant Eli Williams, was deep in the woods when he first encountered what had been destroying alien supply lines. A massive, hulking creature, part predator, part beast of burden, had been hunting the aliens' automated drones. The beast was unlike anything the invaders had encountered. It had learned to target their technology, exploiting weaknesses with terrifying precision. Sergeant Williams, watching from a hidden position, realized something. Earth's creatures, from the smallest insect to the largest predator, weren't just mindless. They were calculating. They adapted. They learned. And right now, they were learning how to destroy the invaders' machines. What in the hell? Eli muttered under his breath as he witnessed the creature swipe a massive claw at an alien drone, disabling it instantly. The creatures were not only surviving, they were thriving in the chaos, using the invaders' technology against them. Back at the command center, the human military forces were beginning to see the truth. This planet, with its dangers and hostile environments, had an advantage the aliens had not accounted for. It wasn't just the humans themselves who had adapted, it was the planet as a whole. The storms, the wildlife, the terrain, all of it had turned against the invaders in ways they hadn't predicted. On the alien side, General Torvak was losing his patience. His forces had experienced a series of crippling setbacks, and for the first time, they began to question their mission. This wasn't a conquest, it was a struggle for survival. Even his elite soldiers, trained to overcome any challenge, were being picked off by Earth's wildlife. The jungle, once thought to be an obstacle, was now a death trap for those unprepared. What have we done? Torvak growled, staring at the planet's surface from his command center. We've walked into the lair of a predator far more dangerous than any of us realized. But it wasn't just Earth's natural forces that the invaders had underestimated. It was the humans themselves. In their desperation, they had become resourceful in ways Torvak had never seen before. The very unpredictability of Earth had become their weapon. At the same time, the human command was quickly making preparations to escalate their response. Lieutenant Grange, having downed several alien ships, was now tasked with leading a squadron of fighter jets into the heart of the invaders' fleet. Their goal, to disrupt their communications and give Earth's forces an advantage. As she led her squadron into battle, she smiled grimly. This was her home. This was the planet that had shaped her. And now, she would use every tool Earth had given her to protect it. The invaders may have come prepared for war, but they were about to learn the hardest lesson of all. Earth's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, its armies, or even its weather. It was the people who called it home. The ground trembled beneath the alien forces. No storm this time. No storm clouds. Just the unrelenting pulse of the planet itself, shaking the invaders to their core. And beneath their feet, something far worse was stirring. General Torvak had never been one to show doubt, but as he surveyed the destruction unfolding on Earth, he found his mind struggling to reconcile the brutality of this world. What he had assumed would be an easy conquest had become a nightmare. The planet's surface, with its unpredictable weather and hostile wildlife, was only the beginning. General, we've lost contact with the majority of our ground forces, Clath, his advisor, reported. The reptilian strategist's voice was low, almost grim. The terrain is unlike anything we've encountered. Our equipment is failing, and the underground network of tunnels. Torvak's gaze sharpened. What do you mean by tunnels? There's something beneath the surface. Some kind of vast system of caves and caverns, Clath said, his voice strained. We've lost several squads down there. Our scanners aren't reading anything clearly, but what we do know is this. Our forces are disappearing. Torvak stood in silence for a long moment. Earth wasn't just an aggressive environment above ground. It had an ancient, deadly secret buried deep beneath its crust. He could feel his confidence start to fray. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, human forces were not only holding their ground, but they were thriving. It wasn't just that they knew their world. They were beginning to exploit its very nature. The invaders had walked into a natural trap, but the humans knew the planet's underbelly in ways the aliens never could. Sergeant Eli Williams had learned something extraordinary. The alien invaders had underestimated not just the surface dangers, but the planet's subterranean ecosystem. As a scout in the human military, Williams had explored Earth's vast cave systems and training, but nothing prepared him for the strange, terrifying creatures he found below ground. His squad had entered the caverns not long after receiving reports of alien casualties in the tunnels. What they discovered sent a chill through his bones. Deep in the earth, a massive organism, its shape shifting and blurring with the surrounding rock, had been feasting on the invaders' equipment. This creature, or whatever it was able to disable their high-tech weapons, using its tendrils to dismantle and consume the alien machinery. Williams had seen animals on Earth adapt in unexpected ways, but this was different. This organism wasn't just surviving, it was thriving in the chaos. And worse, it seemed to recognize the alien technology as an enemy. It wasn't random, it was strategic. It attacked when the invaders strayed too close to its domain. "We need to contain this," Williams muttered to his team as they moved deeper into the cavern, the air thick with a strange, pungent scent. "And we need to learn how to use it." Back at the Human Command Center, General Harper had been briefed on the situation. "What are we dealing with down there?" he asked, his voice steady, but filled with an urgency only years of combat could provide. "I'm not sure, sir," Sergeant Williams replied, his eyes wide with disbelief. "It's not just wildlife. This thing, whatever it is, it's almost like a force of nature, working against the invaders. And it's learning how to disable their tech." Harper nodded, the gravity of the situation settling in. The invaders had thought they could control Earth's surface, that its environment would be a simple obstacle. But now, they were dealing with something far older, far more dangerous. Earth's natural systems were actively fighting against the alien occupation. On the alien front, Torvak's patience was running out. He had already lost countless troops to the underground network. Reports came in from his commanders. More ships were being disabled by Earth's volatile environment. Even his fleet, once invincible, was now vulnerable to attacks they couldn't predict. "They are turning our technology against us," Torvak said, his voice dark with frustration. "They don't even need weapons. This planet itself is the weapon." As the alien forces continued to flounder in Earth's deadly embrace, it became clear the surface wasn't the only threat. The invaders had underestimated the depth of Earth's potential for destruction. It wasn't just that humanity was resilient, it was that the entire ecosystem, from the air they breathed to the ground beneath their feet, was a defense mechanism. The invaders had waged war on a planet that had been preparing for this moment for eons. And they had no idea what was coming next. The alien forces were beginning to realize the truth. Earth was not a world to be conquered. It was a world to be survived. And survival on Earth meant adapting quickly or dying painfully. General Torvak stood at the command center of his flagship, the holographic display flickering with images of his troops scattered across the planet. Reports were pouring in, each one more troubling than the last. His elite soldiers, once considered the finest in the galaxy, were now facing conditions they had never been trained to withstand. The weather systems were unpredictable, the wildlife was ferocious, and their technology was failing them at every turn. His fleet had been torn apart by storms, and now even the underground systems were proving to be more of a curse than a blessing. "We need a new strategy, General," Klath said, his voice filled with the weight of their mounting failures. "This world is a living organism. We cannot simply brute force our way through it. We need to understand its nature if we are to have any chance of victory." Torvak's eyes narrowed. He had never been one to retreat, but the reality of the situation was undeniable. They were losing more troops every hour, and even their most advanced technologies were no match for Earth's ferocity. Yet, retreating wasn't an option. If they left now, they would be seen as weak, vulnerable. And that was a risk Torvak was unwilling to take. "We'll adapt or we'll die," Torvak muttered, more to himself than to Klath. "Prepare the next wave. We'll push forward. But this time, we'll use Earth's chaos to our advantage." On the surface, Earth's human resistance was far from defeated. The storm that had decimated the first wave of alien forces had subsided, but it had only served as a prelude to something far more significant. The human military had learned quickly from their mistakes and was using the very environment that had once been an obstacle to their advantage. Guerrilla tactics were no longer enough. They needed to turn the tables on their invaders. Lieutenant Sarah Grange, now leading a squadron of elite pilots, flew through the wreckage of the alien fleet, each maneuver more daring than the last. Her squadron had taken down several alien craft in the past few hours, and she was learning more about their weaknesses with every passing minute. They weren't just fighting an enemy. They were fighting a planet that fought for them. "Sir, we're being jammed again," one of her squadron members reported, his voice tight with frustration. Sarah's hands flew over the controls as she navigated through a thick layer of clouds, using the unpredictable weather as her shield. The alien forces had been relying on their superior technology to track them, but Earth's atmospheric conditions were proving to be their equalizer. She had no doubt that Earth storms, its electromagnetic interference, and even its wildlife were actively fighting back against the invaders. "They've learned to adapt," Sarah muttered under her breath, realizing that their tactics were starting to work. Meanwhile, in the thick of the jungle, Sergeant Eli Williams and his team were navigating the dense foliage. They had been tasked with scouting alien positions, but what they were discovering went far beyond simple reconnaissance. The creatures of Earth weren't just aggressive, they were intelligent. They had begun to use the alien invaders' equipment against them. Weapons that had once been wielded by the invaders were now in the claws of Earth's predators, turned into tools for destruction. The jungle, the oceans, and the skies, everything was alive with hostility. And the invaders were unprepared. Williams crouched down beside a fresh set of alien tracks, his hand resting lightly on the mud. The terrain was changing rapidly. The creatures were evolving, adapting to the presence of the invaders. In the distance, he could hear the unmistakable screech of a creature, a massive predator, attacking one of the alien supply units. "Sir," Williams said, turning to his commanding officer, "it's not just the wildlife. The planet itself is learning how to fight back. These creatures are adapting faster than we thought. We need to step up our game." Back at the Human Command Center, General Harper was already planning the next phase of the resistance. The invaders had underestimated Earth's potential, and now it was time to turn the tide. He had already dispatched new orders to his troops. Focus on exploiting Earth's natural defenses. Use the terrain. Use the weather. Use the wildlife. "We've fought through this world's chaos for centuries," Harper said, rallying his commanders. "The aliens thought they could control it, but they don't understand what it takes to survive here. We do. Now, let's make them regret their invasion." For the first time since the invasion began, the alien forces found themselves on the defensive. Their technology had once been their greatest strength, but now it was their greatest weakness. Every step they took seemed to trigger a new disaster. Wildfires, floods, violent earthquakes. And Earth's creatures, once thought to be mere pests, were evolving into predators capable of outsmarting the invaders at every turn. Torvak paced back and forth, his mind racing. He had sent his forces deeper into the heart of the planet, hoping to find a way to suppress Earth's chaos. But the deeper they went, the worse it got. Earth's terrain wasn't just hostile, it was alive, and it was protecting itself. The more they tried to adapt, the more the planet seemed to adapt in return. "We're being outclassed by a planet," Torvak growled, his voice filled with frustration. "They've turned their survival instincts into a weapon. We need to rethink everything." Clath looked at him, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps we are not fighting the right battle." Torvak stared at him, his eyes narrowing. "What are you suggesting?" "The humans are not the only force on this world," Clath said quietly. "Earth itself is fighting with them, and we've only just begun to realize the true scope of what we're up against." It was clear now, Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a battleground. And the invaders had just waged war on the wrong world. The alien forces were breaking. Their technology, once the pinnacle of galactic superiority, now malfunctioned at every turn. Earth's storm-lashed skies, violent wildlife, and treacherous terrain had ground them down. The planet wasn't just hostile, it was actively dismantling their invasion, piece by piece. General Torvak stood at the command center, his face grim. He had come to Earth believing it was an easy target, another world to conquer. Now, he was watching as his fleet deteriorated before his eyes. His best soldiers had been killed by wild beasts, crushed by earthquakes, or swallowed by the planet's relentless storms. Even the elite soldiers of his command, trained for every eventuality, had become victims of Earth's overwhelming chaos. This isn't just an invasion. It's a slaughter, Torvak muttered, his fists clenched. We've underestimated this world at every turn. Clath, standing beside him, nodded solemnly. We have to reconsider our approach, General. The planet isn't just fighting us. It's fighting back on a level we cannot comprehend. And we have no idea how much worse it can get. Torvak's gaze shifted to the tactical map. The once cohesive lines of their forces had broken into chaotic, scattered groups. The initial landing was a success, but everything since then had been a disaster. With each new hour, more ships were lost, more resources destroyed, and more soldiers killed. We need to make a decision, Clath said. We either leave or we commit fully. But if we stay, we may not just lose the war. We could lose everything. Torvak's mind raced. Leaving wasn't an option. The prestige of his species was on the line, and retreating would mean disgrace. But they couldn't continue like this. Earth had turned into an insurmountable force of nature. Its defenses were too powerful, too unpredictable. They were trapped. Meanwhile, on the surface, the humans were growing bolder. They had learned how to use Earth's chaos as a weapon. The resistance wasn't just holding its ground anymore. It was on the offensive. Lieutenant Sarah Grange's squadron had become a symbol of that resistance. With each successful mission, the aliens' hold on Earth loosened further. The human pilots had discovered the key to defeating the invaders: adaptability. They were no longer simply reacting to alien movements. They were exploiting weaknesses, using Earth's weather patterns, terrain, and even wildlife to their advantage. On the ground, Sergeant Eli Williams and his team were coordinating with human forces to launch a final assault on the alien command post. After weeks of guerrilla warfare, they knew the alien invaders' strategies better than the invaders themselves. "We've got one shot at this," Williams said, his voice low but filled with determination. "We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we hit them where it hurts. They won't know what hit them." His team nodded in agreement. They had seen the horrors Earth could unleash. They knew how to survive. And now, they were going to show the aliens just how deadly Earth could be when pushed to its limits. As the sun set, the final offensive began. The resistance struck from every angle: air, land, and sea. Fighter jets cut through the sky, while human soldiers engaged alien troops in brutal firefights on the ground. The planet itself seemed to aid them, as if Earth's very nature was on their side. A sudden, fierce storm whipped across the battlefield, disabling alien communications and making their weapon systems useless. Torvak's forces were stunned. They had never faced anything like this. The humans, who they had initially dismissed as primitive, had turned their planet's fury into an unstoppable weapon. And now they were on the verge of complete collapse. Back in his command center, Torvak finally spoke. "We can't keep this up. We've lost control." Clath stood in silence, his mind already considering their options. "If we don't retreat, we'll lose the war. But if we leave now, we'll never be able to return. The cost will be too great." Torvak's hands trembled as he clenched his fists. He had faced countless battles, won many wars, but nothing like this. Earth wasn't just a battleground. It was a force in itself, and it was pushing back with everything it had. "We need to leave," Torvak said quietly, a sharp edge to his voice. "We've been defeated, but we'll survive. Our species will survive. But Earth has shown us something we didn't expect." Clath nodded, understanding the gravity of the decision. "It's not just the humans, is it, General?" Torvak's gaze lingered on the chaos unfolding outside his window. "No. Earth itself is the enemy, and we have no idea how far its defenses go." The alien fleet began to retreat, but the damage was done. Earth had proven itself not just a death world, but a world that would not be conquered. It was a lesson the invaders would never forget. Never underestimate a planet that fights back. The humans had won, for now, But as they watched the alien ships retreat into the heavens, they knew this battle was only the beginning. Earth had defended itself, but the universe was vast. And if another enemy arrived, they would have to be ready to fight again. The last of the alien ships limped into the sky, their engines sputtering under the strain of an enemy they had failed to understand. The dust from the battlefield still hung thick in the air, settling over a world that had fought back with a fury that no one had anticipated. Earth had won, but at a cost. General Torvak stood at the window of his flagship, watching as his fleet retreated into the stars. His pride, once unshakable, now lay in tatters. The defeat was absolute, and the consequences of their failure would ripple through the galaxy. They had underestimated Earth, and that mistake had nearly cost them everything. "We've lost," Torvak muttered, his voice hollow. This was not just a loss of troops. It was a loss of honor. Beside him, Klath studied the images of the battlefield, his eyes scanning the wreckage. "Perhaps we underestimated the humans, General, but we also underestimated Earth itself. Its environment, its creatures, they were all weapons. We were never truly fighting the humans. We were fighting the planet." Torvak didn't respond. He knew Klath was right. Earth had never been just a simple, primitive world. It had been a death trap for those who dared invade, a force that would crush any invader, no matter how advanced. The humans had fought, yes, but they had fought with the land on their side. The planet's fury, its harsh ecosystems, had turned the tide against them. On the surface, the human forces were celebrating. Their military had suffered losses, but the defeat of the alien invaders was a monumental victory. For the first time, humanity had proven that they were not just survivors, they were forces to be reckoned with. Yet, as the celebrations raged on, a shadow of uncertainty loomed. This battle was over, but was the war? Lieutenant Sarah Grange, now hailed as a hero, stood among her squadron, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The skies were clear for now, the air still. But something about the quiet unsettled her. "What now?" she whispered to herself. The victory was hollow. Earth had repelled the invaders, but the galaxy had seen its might. Torvak's defeat would not go unnoticed. The galaxy was vast, and somewhere far beyond Earth's atmosphere, enemies far more dangerous than the ones they had just defeated were watching. The victory celebrations felt premature. The real war was just beginning. Back at the Human Command Center, General Harper addressed his commanders. "We've fought back a threat, but we've also sent a message. Earth is not a world to be taken lightly. But we've made enemies. And the next time they come, we'll need to be ready." The implications of their victory weighed heavily on Harper's mind. They had defeated the aliens by using Earth's natural chaos, by adapting faster than their enemies. But what if Earth wasn't the only planet capable of such resistance? What if other worlds, like Earth, had been shaped by forces beyond their invaders' comprehension? What if they were just one piece of a much larger puzzle? Sergeant Eli Williams, standing at the edge of the command center, mulled over the same question. "The message has been sent," he said, his voice steady. "We've won today, but it's only a matter of time before they come again. And next time, we might not have the element of surprise." Harper nodded. "Next time, we'll be ready. But we have to ask ourselves, is this just the beginning of something much larger? Is Earth the only planet out there with this kind of power?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The invasion had been repelled, but Earth's place in the galaxy had changed forever. The victory had been hard-won, but the cost was high. They had repelled the first wave, but the true challenge was still to come. Torvak's fleet vanished into the stars, but Harper and his commanders knew this wasn't the end. Earth had survived, but as the stars stretched out before them, they realized that victory might just be the beginning of a far darker journey into the unknown.